So today we're going to be doing subtracting. Again, we're going to start with the easy stuff and it's going to build into a little bit harder. So we're going to be doing like denominators today, subtracting like denominators. So go ahead and get your notebooks out and start writing this down. So we're going to start with an easy example. So it's going to be example 1 is 7/10 minus 3/10. Okay, so you don't have to rewrite this one up and down because this one is pretty simple. We only subtract the numerators, okay? So denominators always stay the same. We're not trying to make them into equivalent fractions because they're already the same. Today we're doing like denominators. Tomorrow it's going to get a little bit more complex, and so we're going to have to do the same thing with equivalent fractions, making the equivalent fractions. We're going to turn it into mixed numbers, but right now it's going to be a little bit more simple. So 7 minus 3, 4. Denominator stays the same. Okay, am I done? Or does that look a little fishy? To me this looks a little fishy. I know that I can simplify, sorry. Okay, so what can I divide the top and bottom by? The greatest common factor of these two would be 2. So divide top by 2, the bottom by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this is my answer. Okay? It's going to get a little bit trickier though. So just like if you have 1,000 minus 999, you guys know how to do that because you know how to borrow. Okay? So when we have whole numbers, we're going to start borrowing. And I'll talk about, I'll explain what I mean. So for example number 2, so I'm going to erase this. Example number 2 is going to be a big number, whole number, 5 minus 1 2/3, okay? I don't have a little fraction here to take away from this fraction. So I need to borrow from this one. So I'm going to talk about the steps for that. Step 1 is going to be called borrow and rename. Okay? Step 2 is going to just be subtract. And step 3 is going to be to simplify. All right, but what does that mean? Borrow and rename. So let's talk about that here. So back to this example, I have 5. I'm going to rewrite it because for me, like I said, it's always easier to look at it up and down. Okay, I don't have a fraction here. Okay, I can't do 0 minus 2/3. So I need to borrow from this. Okay, a whole number is actually, so for example, 3/3, that's equal to 1, right? 6/3 is equal to 2. 9/3 is equal to 3. So you guys already know how to do that. So I just need to borrow one fraction, okay? So I'm going to turn this one into a 4. And I just borrowed one fraction. 3/3. 3/3 is equal to 1 whole, okay? So I just borrowed this fraction right here and I renamed it 3/3, okay? So this is going to take a little bit of practice. If you didn't understand what I just did, I kind of jumped, okay? So it's going to take that little bit of practice to know how to do that, okay? So I'm going to say it again. Okay, I had a 5, and I'm going to borrow 1. If I borrow 1, this turns into a 4. And I just borrowed 1, so now I have 3 over 3. Okay, it's the same thing as just regular borrowing when you're subtracting. If I have 10, or let's say I have 100 minus, let's say 89, okay? This is just a quick example of trying to see what I mean by borrowing. Remember, I can't do 0 minus 9, okay? I can't do 0, I can't borrow from a 0, so I have to borrow from this 1. That turns into a 0. This turns into a 10. Okay, I still need to borrow here, so this turns into a 9, and this turns into a 10. Okay, so it's the same idea, but now we're just using fractions. I borrowed from this 5, turned into a 4, and now I have this 3 over 3. Why did I do 3 over 3? Well, my denominator here is a 3, so I want to make sure that I'm sticking with the same denominator. Okay, I can't just say, well, I can do 5 over 5. That 5 over 5 is still 1 whole, and I could do that, but it's not going to help me when I have a different denominator over here. Okay, so I want to rename it the same thing, the same denominator as that one. All right. Hopefully that made sense. I'm going to do another example after this, so it'll kind of all make sense here. Okay, so now step 2, subtract. Just subtract. We already know how to do that. We just did it on the first example up there. So 3 minus 2, 1, my same denominator. 4 minus 1 is 3. Okay, am I done? Step 3 is to simplify. Do I need to simplify, or am I done? I'm done. So, there's my answer. We're going to do another example that's a little bit harder, has a little bit more steps. So, I'm going to erase this. Make sure you have your notes so you know what your steps are. Okay? Example number 3. 7 1/4 minus 1 3/4. Okay, it's going to get a little bit harder now. First thing I want to do is rewrite this. Okay, 7 1/4 minus 1 3/4. Okay, subtract. All right. Can I do 1 minus 3? No. Okay, I can't do that. So I need to borrow. Same thing with subtraction. Okay, I have to borrow if I can't do it. So I borrow from my 7. That turns into a 6. And remember, I just borrowed, like the other one, I use the same denominator, 4 over 4. What about this one though? Well, I already have this here, so I need to add them together, and this whole thing now becomes 5 over 4. I haven't done any subtraction yet. First, I'm just doing the borrowing and the renaming. I borrowed that 4 over 4, and I renamed it 5 over 4 because of this 1 over 4 that was already there. Okay? So, now the next step is to subtract. 5 minus 3, 2 over 4. 6 minus 1 is 5. Am I done? No. This looks a little fishy. Okay, what can I divide the top and bottom by? 2. 2 divided by 2, 1. 4 divided by 2, 2. 5 1/2. Okay, this is the tricky part, the borrowing. Okay, so don't let that get you caught up. It's the same thing. Let's do 53 minus 39. Okay? You gotta visualize that this is the same thing, okay? Can I do 3 minus 9? No. I have to borrow. Borrowed from this 4, and now I just borrowed, and I now have to rename. This 3 is not a 3 anymore. It's a 13. I borrowed 10 in order to make that happen. Now it's a 13. I can do 13 minus 9. That's a 4. That's a 1. That idea is going to carry over here. I borrowed a 4 over 4, and I added it to that 1 over 4, and that's where you get the 5 over 4. Okay, so I know that's a little bit tricky, but again, this is just going to take practice. Just do them, keep going, and just keep doing it, and you'll eventually catch on, okay? The main thing, though, is to follow the steps, okay? The first thing you have to do is borrow and rename. That's this part, borrow and rename. The rest of that, subtract, simplify, you already know how to do that, okay? So, hopefully you understood it. Today's homework is homework number 65, 10.5. Make sure you write that at the top, homework number 65. Tomorrow we're going to go ahead and start with Zoom, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to text me or let me know or email me. All right? Bye, guys.